This week we're going to be looking at James Mangold's 1995 movie Heavy, starring Pruitt Taylor Vince and Liv Tyler, Debbie Harry. It's, if I read off the IMDb listing, it's clearly the distributor's stroke publicist's synopsis, which makes me want to be sick in my mouth. It says, the
So yeah,
life...
it's not very kind, is it? It's a very kind of,
Well, it just
yeah.
makes it seem like a... Well, I don't know. The wording is odd. The life of an overweight, unhappy cook is changed after a kind, beautiful college dropout comes to work as a waitress at his and his mother's roadside restaurant. I mean, technically, there's nothing wrong with that, but it does kind of make it seem like it's going to be a bit more happy-go-lucky than it is.
Yeah, and it's kind of lowest common denominator. It's not that he's unhappy, he's just kind of stuck in a bubble, isn't he? And
Yeah,
he needs a little bit of inspiration. And yes, she's pretty, but that's not what she's about. It's not what her character's about. It's
yeah,
they sort of
absolutely.
miss the point.
It kind of does everyone in it a disservice.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't make it very appealing. And actually, it's like a really good American movie about, that sort of slice of life, roadside diner, the characters drifting in and out with a kind of really authentic people watching style. It's a really nicely crafted movie. It's a kick in the teeth, that IMDb summary, isn't it?
Mm. And it's funny, I was looking at some Amazon user reviews, which I know is kind of only a step up from YouTube comments, but I don't know, sometimes there's really, really perceptive reviews on there, but
You've given up with Pauline Kael, and now you're just looking at Amazon user reviews.
yeah, there's a lot of people on there who are kind of disappointed, saying, "Well, I wanted the plot to go in this direction, and it didn't. It was really slow, and it's okay, all right." But anyway, this is your first viewing, isn't it?
No, I saw it because I'm a Stallone fan. I was really looking forward to Copland, and I'm a Mangold fan. I think I find him like really reliable as a kind of cinematic voice, and I think I must have tracked down Heavy around about the time of Copland, because I definitely remember seeing it either very early in film school or on my way to film school and thinking, oh, this is the kind of movie I'd love to make. It's just really kind of, it's classic cinema, isn't it?
Yeah,
This
it is.
just being able to step into a real world and look at real people and understand the subtle nuances of their lives. It's just like, it's so good.
Yeah,
So yeah, but I haven't seen it since. I haven't seen it in 20 years. So I was happy when you suggested it, and yeah, like I say, I've kind of followed Mangold all the way through, and whenever I see him attached to something, it always just elevates it.
mm.
It's the level of expectation that it's going to be good just by knowing that he's involved.
I think there's a conversation to be had between us later on in this about Mangold and Copland and his career overall.
Yeah.
I saw this completely by chance back when it was released, because I used to work with a group of really nice people back then in the mid 90s. We used to go for drinks after work, and then because we were in central London, if there was a film that somebody wanted to see, we would often go in a small
Mm.
group or a pair. And there's a woman I work with who wanted to go and see this, which I guess because it has Evan Dando in it and it's got Debbie Harry
Yeah,
in it,
sure.
soundtrack by Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth, which ticked all her boxes.
Yeah, it's a really 90s kind of
Yeah.
ensemble, isn't it?
So I went along to see it. She was drunk and she fell asleep, but I absolutely loved the movie from start to finish.
Oh,
I
good.
think I might have gone to see it again. And then I bought it on VHS, one of those big, chunky, grey artificial eye VHSs,
Mhm.
and then on DVD in America. But yeah, when you came up with these podcasts with the mandate for lesser known movies, I thought that would be a good opportunity to revisit.
Well, here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
It's also our season finale, so it's a nice one to close out season two with.
So yeah, I think it's. I mean, in the mid '90s, there's a lot of kind of indie movies are about guns and robberies and things like that. But this is your kind of perfect archetypal chamber piece independent film, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
it's all about character and nuance and detail, and it's kind of like a little mini masterpiece. And for a first movie, he did get kind of best director at Sundance for this, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
It's shockingly good.
Yeah, it has all
Um,
those kind of character details. I was trying to think of comparisons, and in the end, I sort of gave up with movies and just went to like Raymond Carver and Bukowski, and the kind of those authors they have the time to observe those details in literature, which you don't often see with the kind of breakneck pacing of indie cinema. You know, when I was going through this scene by scene, I was just making notes of the little threads so that if we started pulling on stuff, I was able to remember where it kind of began and ended. And I took a pause to make a cup of tea, and it was a page of notes, and I was only 22 minutes in because there's so much kind of little character detail that just washes over you when you're viewing passively, but when you're kind of dictating the notes based on every single kind of important picture, then yeah, you really see the mastery of the storytelling.
I did exactly the same thing. I think it's one of my notes. I was going through it kind of, you know, when you're doing your first notes, you're just kind of listing what's happening and how it seems to fit together. But it's just one of my first notes on page one is, well, I mean, my larger point is that this is an absolute, it's just a model of storytelling economy.
Mm.
And it's weird because it's only like a 100-minute movie, and you know people complain that oh it's a slow movie, but it's not. It's like within 5 minutes you've nailed all of the characters without any
Yeah, yeah,
exposition. You can
yeah,
see
yeah. It's
all their
mad.
relationships,
Yep.
all you know their entire situation stretching back decades, and it's all nailed within 5 minutes. And I've got another note further on, 30 minutes in, and all the relationships between all the characters are set. You know, this is
Yeah, yeah.
absolute brilliant, not textbook because that suggests kind of rote and boring, but it's absolute how to do this
Mm.
structuring and storytelling. It's
Yeah, and you can see how he seems like he's really good with the cast as well, because the performances do a lot of the work, and you can see why that sets up his career of working with just quality actors, and
mm,
he must be a very attractive director for cast to come to, just because of this style of working, this kind of body of work that's all about character detail.
I think it's worth talking about him as a person. I mean, I don't know, obviously as a person, but as a director, I get the feeling that because he started very young, he's kind of very confident, and that he's a very kind of outgoing, open, friendly person. And I think that kind of must factor into how well he works with actors.
Yeah, I was trying to piece together his career, and it seems like before he went to film school, he'd secured a writer director deal at Disney.
Well, no, you went to CalArts first, apparently, and then he got the Disney deal. And then after the Disney deal didn't take him anywhere, he went back to New York to Columbia Film School.
Ah, okay,
Then he
okay.
was at Columbia, mentored under Milos Forman.
Yeah, he had Alexander McKendrick at CalArts and Milos Forman in Columbia. So, okay,
That's great.
that'll
That's a
do.
really,
Yeah,
really good kind of classical mentoring, isn't it?
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And whilst he was at Columbia, that's where he was developing Heavy and Copland, the original Copland script.
And Heavy's based on a classmate of his who was overweight and whose mother owned the local diner.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
All right. And then obviously after Heavy wins in Best Director at Sundance, he's straight into the corporate world with Copland, which was a bit of a disaster in terms of a production, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a mess, and yeah, you just feel like that with the Weinstein's involvement as well. Like that article I sent you, it just
Mm.
seems like they had their hands all over the edit, and it was one of those movies famously that I'd seen the trailer probably 50 times before I saw the film, so I knew the trailer inside out. And there's loads of scenes missing from the film that were in the
Right.
trailer, and I was always like, "There's got to be another version out there," but it's kind of never really appeared. So,
I remember reading at the time. I think the original script was about a third longer. There's an entire act missing at the end of it, which was never shot,
oh right, okay.
which is why it kind of ends quite with a bit of a whimper.
Yeah, I remember them being reshoots, and those being kind of widely publicized. And there's something about De Niro's moustache, isn't there? He's gone from his Copland moustache to his Jackie Brown moustache.
Yeah, and I was pretty underwhelmed with Copland when it came out. It all seemed pretty third hand to me, and there was nothing in it that grabbed me at all. And it did feel like a massive disappointment. It felt kind of really clumsy and lumbering after Heavy.
Sure.
So I kind of tuned out of James Mangold at that point, and I've never really tuned in again. I mean, it's interesting that you say that you find him an interesting voice in cinema. I just, at this point, I find him a really, really good, safe pair of hands rather than anything else.
Oh, I really liked Identity. I think that was what kind of
Oh, I
yeah.
hated that. I
Oh,
absolutely
really?
loathed it.
I thought
I
just thought it
think
was really clever and
that
sort of
was
twisty, and yeah.
that was the nail in the coffin for me actually, because I never saw Girl Interrupted. I've never fancied that at all,
Yeah, I saw that and liked it. Yeah.
and I didn't see Kate and Leopold,
No, I didn't
but
see
I
that.
did see Identity and absolutely despised it.
What about Walk the Line?
Yeah, I seem to remember seeing it, but I don't know if I'm getting it mixed up with Ray or something. They say,
Okay, yeah, sure.
I
Like,
think I've seen
like,
it, but I don't know.
oh my God. What about 310 to Yuma? Come on, that's
Yeah,
like that's
yeah.
that's a modern classic.
It's okay. This is where it's like none of his films are classics. I feel none of them. You know, that's
Come
a
on.
remake, and it's quite good.
It's brilliant, 310 to Yuma. It's so good.
I think
It's not
no.
it's
Here's
not
the thing.
okay. It's
I think
really good. It's really good, 310 to Yuma. That's like
I think it's okay. I think it's quite good, and I think Logan's quite good. And you know, when I get round to watching Ford versus Ferrari,
it's excellent.
yeah, everyone
It's,
says it's excellent. I'm sure I'll think it's really good, but none of these are kind of none of these films feel like they have like a voice. They just feel like really, really well made, old fashioned movies, and I say that in a good sense.
yeah, that's it. But that's its appeal, I think. You're getting like classic stories told with a kind of classic cinematic style and really kind of detailed performances that just enrich the viewing experience. I think, in in the world where we have, really kind of disposable cinema, to get somebody that can craft a movie that really stays with you and keeps you talking and makes you sort of, 310 to Yuma is one of those that I wanted to phone my uncle straight away who loved westerns and be like, you have to see this. And Ford versus Ferrari, I know a couple of petrol heads, and as soon as I'd seen that, I was like, oh, have you guys seen this? It's so good. I think his films definitely have that.
The way that I describe, I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. It's like I will watch the movies and I'll really enjoy them, but it's not something that I kind of seek out. And it just seems I know that I should kind of rebalance this in my head, but at the time it did seem a bit disappointing that after something that was kind of like felt like it was an auteur movie, like Heavy, that that it's basically been very, very well tooled mainstream, verging on product sometimes. You know, Logan is good and it's really watchable, but it is still just kind of like a mainstream recycling of superhero comics, albeit dark ones. I don't know.
Oh, oh man,
But on a positive
you're
note, you know,
crazy. You're outrageous. That's
on a
I can't
positive
believe
note,
you
if he,
said
you
that.
know, if he ever gets attached to like a franchise movie, like he's supposed to be doing Indiana Jones 5, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah, that's happening.
Perfect pair of hands for it. And there's a novel by Don Winslow, I think his name is. It's a novel I read on holiday a couple of years ago called The Force.
Oh, the police thing.
Yeah, he'd be perfect for that. Absolutely brilliant for that, and I hope that happens.
Yeah, for me, when I see the any film that's kind of coming up, I read the outline, and then if I see his name attached to it, I get an extra level of expectation of quality, and I think for me that's what he brings, that expectation of quality. Like I know it's going to be a really well crafted, watchable film with some cinematic flourishes, and I think this has it. I think Copland does 310 to Yuma for sure,
Night and
and
day.
I skipped that. I didn't even put it on my list. Yeah, I don't even know if I've seen that, but I'm sure it's watchable. Yeah, I've cherry picked. I haven't put like everything on there.
Yeah.
Same with Kate and Leopold. I read the outline. I was like, what the hell is that?
And you're a big fan of Logan as well, aren't you? That was a good one for you.
Yeah, I've seen it. I did uh, all the X-Men films on Disney Plus, and then filled them in with my little boy, who's 9. And I kind of I'd forgotten how brutal Logan was, so I remember that he obviously died in the end, and so I thought that was going to be the the big trauma. And actually, as it starts, it's like really brutally violent and loads of swearing. So I had to kind of we had to watch it with a sort of explanation all the way through. Like, don't forget, it's just a film, and
Mm.
it's not real, and that's the guy from The Greatest Showman. Don't forget, he sings songs and likes to dance as well. He's just playing a character, and yeah, I couldn't turn it off, otherwise I'd be lynched. But yeah, it was. It's pretty brutal, but I think it's excellent. I think it's yes, it's a comic book movie, but I think it's again aspiring to create a character that you really kind of are massively invested in by the time you get to the end. And I think a lot of movies struggle with that, even non-comic book movies, to really draw you into it. I think, yeah, it's excellent.
So, should we talk about some of the people involved?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, it has Debbie Harry. It's tricky to work out what she's acted in and what she hasn't. Like, obviously, there's this and Videodrome stick in my mind, but then you look on IMDb,
Yeah,
and IMDb does that really annoying thing where they count music videos as credits,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think they really should have a separate subsection for that, or a separate kind of listing, because she's got 102 titles on IMDb, and it's really
Oh, right,
difficult to
okay.
filter out what actual films there are. Yeah, I can't remember seeing her in anything other than this and Videodrome.
Apparently she's credited in Copland as playing a waitress called Dolores.
It's very much an in joke, isn't it?
Yeah.
She's really good though, isn't she?
Yeah, she is really good. I think Liv Tyler brought her to the production, didn't she?
Really?
From yeah, because they were friends through Steven Tyler's Aerosmith rock and roll days.
Yeah, she's about, I guess, late 40s, turning 50 at this stage, and
Yeah,
she's
she's that sort of fading beauty, isn't she? You know, once kind of center of attention in a small town, and now
mm,
kind of on the margins, threatened by the beautiful young waitress that comes to work beside her. Yeah, it's nice. She does a really good job, and nice that that is left unchanged by the end of the film. It's not like she's gone through any massive revelations. She's still a bit catty and still very lonely.
and Liv Tyler, I guess, was pretty much this. This must be a kind of breakthrough movie, isn't it?
It's her debut, apart from the music video she did for Aerosmith. I think she was doing a little bit of modeling. Mangold did a taped audition and was just like, yeah, she's the one.
She's really, really good, isn't she?
Yeah, she's brilliant. And, you know, she does have a kind of classic film star beauty, but also like she's so normal looking at the same time. Do you know what I mean? She's just like a slightly more attractive normal person than a kind of really glamorous movie star.
The performance is really nice, and I do like the fact that the film gives the character some time as well. It's not just, I guess we'll get into it a little bit later, but it's not just kind of her as seen through Vic's eyes.
No, no, she totally has her own life and, you know, her own kind of questions on her direction and the mistakes that she's making. You know, you feel all of that weight of her life alongside all the other characters. That's what makes this such a great movie, is that everybody in it feels real, you know, and you, like you said before, you know, you get everything about them almost instantly.
I really like the way that in each of her scenes, even though they're brief, and this is primarily Victor's story, it gives her some sort of moment of empowerment. There's the bit where she's waiting for her boyfriend to finish work at the garage, and she's kind of looking out the window, and there's another
Oh
guy
yeah.
in a truck just kind of stripping off his top and putting a different t-shirt on. It gives her kind of like her own moment of sexual interest in someone
Yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah, that's it. Dare I say the female gaze, you know,
Yeah,
like she is, yeah, she just definitely has. It's nice because she has an uncertain confidence. It's like she knows that this isn't everything, but she doesn't know how to get where she wants to be yet either. So, yeah, I think it's a brilliant character.
I guess we'll tick off all the cool names first. There's a soundtrack by Thurston Moore from
Yeah,
Sonic Youth.
Sonic Youth. Yeah,
I was quite surprised that he doesn't seem to have any other kind of narrative film soundtrack work. He's done some
yeah,
documentary stuff, but I mean, I guess he has other things going on in his life. But
yeah. Just based, you know, I know you're very particular about music, but for me, I was like, it just really works. It was, you know, it seemed effortless
mm,
and really did its job.
is Evan Dando a known quantity for you?
I mean, I know who he is from the Lemonheads,
Mm,
but and a friend of mine, she's obsessed with him and has like painted him and all sorts. So I kind of know him as a friend's weird obsession.
mm,
But yeah, apart from that, no, you know, I don't think I've ever seen him in a film.
no, I'm exactly the same. I know who he is, and a friend of mine who was a regular barometer for the what was going on in the world of mainstream indie in the early and mid '90s used to like the Lemonheads, but beyond that, he's just yeah, I know the name. He's okay in
Yeah,
this, isn't he? He's all right. He's
yeah,
good at
yeah,
being a bit good at being a dick.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's sort of believable as a small town mechanic as well. You know, sort of doesn't, or he thinks he's you know, a musician, wants to be out of the small town. You kind of get his whole story, and it's all convincing. Yeah, I mean, there's not that much for him to do other than just be kind of annoying on the
Mm,
peripheries. He's, you know, he's handsome. He's got a nice face. I can see why the ladies like him.
yeah, I did like the way that it kind of it gave him some musical stuff to do in the film, but kind of it was quite mocking of it. So
Yeah,
I did like
yeah,
Kelly's like, do we have to listen to this like the ninth time we've heard this song tonight?
yeah. She's not giving him any feedback, and it has that. It almost sounds like that song David Bowie sings in Extras, where he's taking the piss out of Ricky Gervais, like little fat man. He's making up some song, isn't he, about Pruitt Taylor Vince's character Victor?
And Shelley Winters, who surely she could have been doing this in her sleep, which is not to criticise the performance, which is absolutely pitch perfect.
Apparently, Mangold tracked down her home address and sent her the script with a written letter
Mm.
saying why he wanted her, and 2 days later, she was like, "I'm in." Did you hear that story about her, Pruitt Taylor Vince feeling like she was kind of treading all over his performance?
No, no.
Yeah, so obviously he's quite understated, and she's quite theatrical, quite larger than life. And I think a few days in, Pruitt Taylor Vince went to Mangold and was just like, "Look, man, she's just destroying my performance. She's all over the place, and she's really offensive, and I'm not sure how to deal with it." And so Mangold had to speak to her, and she called Pruitt Taylor Vince onto set in front of the whole cast and crew and listed all the people she'd worked with, like Gene Hackman and Kubrick, and said that she'd insulted all of them, and now he joins a very illustrious list of Hollywood A-list that she's insulted. And apparently that was enough to, you know,
To quieten him.
yeah, that's it. And then off they went. Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean that feeds into the film perfectly, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah, of
it's all
course.
about how somebody's been stepped on, not maliciously,
But
but
he's smothered by his mother,
yeah,
isn't
and
she?
held back and
Yeah, there's that brilliant scene where Liv Tyler says that he should go to kind of chef school
mm,
and just develop his skills, and his mum, sort of in a backhand compliment is like, he doesn't need to go and pay lots of money to learn something he already knows. He's already the best cook in town. It's just, and he's just not allowed off the leash, is he?
mm.
So just one last note on Shelley Winters. While I was looking at her career, I stumbled across a website that she's done so many movies. Basically, there's a website that has an article dedicated to 9 movies in which Shelley Winters dies in the middle. There's so many movies she's done, and it's Gatsby, Night of the Hunter, Poseidon Adventure, Lolita,
Mm.
this, and I was just like, wow! Imagine having like such a broad CV that you can that's like a subsection of your career.
She's like a kind of prototype Sean Bean in that respect, isn't she?
Yeah.
It was interesting watch because we watched Possessor at Christmas,
Oh yeah.
and Sean Bean's in it in a supporting role
Oh yeah. Okay.
that you know is
See,
going to die
start
halfway through.
start the clock.
Just as a footnote, when I was doing my IMDb research, that Joe Grafassi, one of his earlier roles is the band leader in The Deer Hunter.
Oh really?
In the long wedding sequence at the beginning,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
quite a funny little supporting role because he's kind of like getting quite handsy with one of the guests and
yeah, yeah.
causing fights and stuff. It's a really really good character part. I didn't recognise him from that.
No, I didn't recognize him from anything. In fact, I even forgot to research him. He's such an unlikable character in this, isn't he? And
Yeah,
it's just a strength of the film that they don't ever soften that. Like even right at the very end, the last shot of him in Debbie Harry's bed, you're still like, oh, I still don't like that guy. They don't do any. There's no attempt to redeem him at all for the audience.
and finally Pruitt Taylor Vince.
Yeah, he's so good in this.
This is the first time I'd seen him, and it was bitterly disappointing in subsequent years that he's so often cast as psychopath or
Yeah,
his work seems so effortless and he does so much with so little dialogue and exposition here. It's all kind of internal and it's all kind of through expression and body language and
yeah, that's it. Just tiny flickers at the corner of his mouth, and it just feels like his expression changes. I don't know how he does it. It's like it's a, it's an incredible face, isn't it?
it's not a one note performance throughout because there's very very kind of subtle changes in Vic's character throughout. There's a point after his mother's died
Hmm.
where he feels backed into a corner by circumstance and he does start to find his own strength through his mother not being there to take the rudder.
Yeah, that's it.
The point where Dolores and Callie are being their disagreement kind of comes to a head, and he manages to find his voice, but it's just such subtle changes to bring that out.
Mm, mm.
It's not an explosive scene or a big scene of finding yourself. It's just he's
No, no, and even the one time that does happen, there's a point towards the end where he sort of sweeps everything off the bar in kind of self-disgust and anger, and that's like, oh, he probably could have got away with not even doing that. The point where he sees his own reflection is enough, but it adds a little bit of drama. But you think of the range of emotions that the character goes through, from kind of passive to active role in his own life, the joy, the pain, the remorse and sadness. He does all of that with a kind of carefully modulated performance, and a very like his face is very transparent. You're able to get his internal feeling without too much histrionics. They'd originally approached Black Francis to play the character, yeah, and he didn't want to do it. And then a friend of Mangold's was working on Nobody's Fool and was like, "Oh, you should see this guy. He's really good." And that's how Pruitt Taylor Vince came to get involved.
Yeah, I was really surprised how far back his CV goes. Like it's the same with John C. Riley.
Oh yeah, okay.
You know, and you think, okay, well, John C. Riley, I kind of date him as kind of mid '90s onwards, but you realise he's been working since the mid '80s. And you look at Pruitt Taylor Vince, he's got like bits and pieces in early Alan Parker movies. He's in Wild at Heart, which I don't remember at all.
Yeah, I saw that on the IMDb. I was like, okay, next time I watch that, I'll keep an eye out for him.
Jacob's Ladder, JFK, and yeah, Nobody's Fool. I'm surprised that penny didn't drop when I was watching this again. Wim Wenders' The End of Violence from '97. Identity, which was a big disappointment for me because wasn't he a twitchy psychopath in that?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah. I don't remember him in Nurse Betty, which I'd quite like to watch again, actually. That was really funny. And obviously, he has a magnificent role and a fantastic performance in Deadwood.
You skipped Natural Born Killers.
I did skip Natural Born Killers in life and in this podcast.
And he also had a really good supporting role in the second season of The Walking Dead, where he played Otis,
Oh, okay.
tragically betrayed by Shane.
And there's let's talk about the less famous people involved. The director of photography, Michael Barrow. It's like really remarkably good work in this. I mean, I guess it's just the way it goes sometimes, but there's nothing remarkable on his CV since then,
Yeah, yeah,
unless there's gems in there that we haven't seen. But I don't know. I just think it's staggering that somebody can do work like this, which feels so natural and feels so much like it's available light and just capturing mood.
yeah. That's it. No, I was going to say the same with the editor. You know, when you, like you say, you look at the cinematography and the cut, and you think, wow, this is all so well crafted that these people must be, really established now in the kind of A list, and both have solid careers, but you just wish that it was work that was more kind of prominent, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say a third of this movie is the performances, and then another third of it is cinematography, but then the third I think is the locations and art direction, and the art director Michael Shaw. This is his second movie, but the art direction on this is just exquisite, isn't it? All of
Yeah, I
the
mean,
detail on
everything
the
feels
interiors.
real. Yeah,
Yeah,
everything feels like it's lived in. Everything, like the house that they choose for Victor and Dolly to call home, with their dog kicking around. It's just like you can see the dust and the corners that they haven't cleaned, and maybe they just found a space that was perfect. But yeah, it feels really lived in and homely.
yeah, and I'm sure with Pete and Dolly's at the bar, I'm sure there was a bar that they could find that ticked most of those boxes. But then you've got stuff towards the end. You've got the final shots where you see the main characters in situ, and you've got Callie's bedroom,
Yeah, yeah.
which looks like obviously it's kind of all the childhood stuff that she's growing out of and is feels
Mm.
confined by, but the level of detail in there, like all the
Yeah, yeah.
little objects and bits and pieces and toys and
Yeah, yeah, but that mirrors a shot that they do of Victor's bedroom about halfway through the film after his mum has died, and there's a kind of slow pan through his space, and it's his kind of old comic books and his old toys. And I saw one review that was saying, "Oh, what kind of a man has a Farrah Fawcett poster on the wall?" It's like, well, he put it up when he was a boy, and that's the point. And the same with Callie's room. There's all these other characters projecting so much onto, she's marrying material, somebody else says, or and the boyfriend just treats her like a sex object, and all of these things. And she is just as really a teenager. She's a child just moving into adulthood, and all these other people. And I want so much more from her. And I think that the point of her room is like, you know, she's just a kid, and so is he at heart. That's them just kind of slowly starting to find their place in the world, and like everyone else should just back off and give them some space to grow.
mm. It's great that Michael Shaw is one of the people involved in this who went on to have a really really solid career.
I didn't
uh,
check. What else has he done?
well, there's lots and lots of movies. The one that came up for me was Kenneth Lonergan's first movie, You Can Count on Me, which is another kind of small town thing, but now he's doing production design for like ongoing series like Billions and Orange is the New Black.
All right,
So
cool.
he's
Yeah,
like really solidly settled in.
yeah, good.
We're going to sort of talk through the film, but the opening of the film like flags up one of the things that makes this such a lovely film, in addition to all the great kind of performance and the work that the actors do. I'm struggling to put it into words, and I'm going to refer to something that it reminded me of. You get the opening of the movie is the sound of a plane passing overhead, which reminded me instantly of a really, really perceptive joke by Douglas Adams and John Lloyd. Did you ever read the book, The Meaning of Life?
No.
It's basically Douglas Adams and his producer John Lloyd put together this book. It's a dictionary of things that there aren't words for. It's basically a comedy book.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
very, very, very good
A,
observational
a
stuff about.
comedy dictionary.
Yeah, so there's one of their words is Hambleton, which is, and I'm quoting this, the sound of a single engine aircraft flying by, heard whilst lying in a summer field in England, which somehow concentrates the silence and sense of space and timelessness and leaves one with a profound feeling of something or other. There's a bit of Hambleton at the beginning of this film and at the end as well. It's just kind of that
Yeah, that's it.
timelessness of a plane passing overhead and the stillness of the atmosphere and just setting the scene in that way.
Yeah, but it's the perfect metaphor as well, isn't it, for these small town lives that are going nowhere.
Mm.
Meanwhile, people are jetting overhead in all different directions to all different places. You know, it's not a sprawling epic. You know, the planes remind you that you're kind of down in this little microcosm, this tiny little world. In fact, it's a microcosm within a microcosm, isn't it? The roadside diner within a small town.
But it's that slightly trippy thing. It's a bit drugstore cowboy as well. That has kind of like that kind of gives a very slightly psychedelic, trippy edge to everyday life, the boredom of everyday life.
Mm.
So we see Pete and Dolly's diner. Dolores arriving for work. Dolly, the Shelley Winters character, interviewing Callie, which is Liv Tyler's character, and Dolores watching jealously. Victor is in the bathroom scrubbing the word sluts that somebody has nail varnished onto the mirror there.
Yeah, but all these little gags they pay off as well. That's again what's really nice about the film. You know, all of the everything that you see and hear now is layered in to resonate later on. It's so good. Dolly's interviewing Callie, who's dropped out of college, and she just says to her, you know, not everybody is supposed to go to college. Like it's this sort of thing that's been mythologized in culture, and it actually is a kind of indulgence and maybe even unnecessary for
Mm,
most people. You know, I like the way she's so dismissive of education.
mm. And as I said before, you know, within this first 5 minutes, you have nailed the four central characters of the movie.
Mm.
It's brilliantly done. What happens next? You kind of play out what must have been the ongoing routine for years and years and decades. Victor cooks the pizzas and the food in the evening, and then you see the kind of wild card aspect that Callie's added when she starts to kind of interact with Victor and they're playing cards together. After we've established kind of like the nighttime routines, you have a morning scene with Victor making breakfast for his mother, driving to the store, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
You get to see some of the kind of location. This is all upstate New York,
yeah, it's really nice.
but I find it really weird. Like this is the fourth time in the last 3 or 4 months that I've seen something which is set in upstate New York or somewhere similar, sort of semi-rural America,
Hmm.
that looks like this and feels like this. And the location is supposed to be kind of quite stifling and quite boring. And usually the characters that you're seeing there are young and
Yeah,
feel they want to move on. But you look at these places and you think, this is the most idyllic place in the world. I want to live here. I want to retire. And you know,
sure, sure.
my wife and I are watching these things going, this just looks stunning. And it's not just that it's photographed nicely, it's just that
Yeah, they look lovely. Totally. I get what you're saying, but it's still I can put myself in the shoes of a young person and think, oh my God, yeah, I can imagine how frustrating that would be, especially in America where it's all about like lifestyle and it feels like you're treading water. Then, yeah, yeah, I can imagine it'd be not so idyllic.
I'm avoiding the temptation to just kind of read through scene by scene what happens. But again, I've got, you know, my notes at the end of 30 minutes, all the relationships and characters are set. Um, and I think the like the beginning of air quotes Act Two is that moment between Victor and his mother where he realizes, you know, he's beginning to become a bit self-conscious about his appearance because suddenly he's found a reason to be self-conscious.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Oh
and
my God, there's that moment where he steps on the scales and it goes
yeah,
all the way round. I've had that experience a few times and it's a shocker. So I was definitely empathizing with him.
yeah, and it's that kind of quiet moment of realization that his mother tries to quash. You know, he says, I'm fat, Ma," and she's. I mean, it was very. I thought the lines that they gave Shelley Winters were very funny. You're not fat. You're husky. You're,
Husky, yeah, I know, it's really nice.
I've no joke. I've actually. This is obviously with a child, but I've witnessed a parent do that.
Mm.
I think it was like when I was 10 or 11. Somebody that I knew who was a year older was a big kid. I mean, he was quite big,
Yeah, yeah.
but I remember his mum saying, "No, no, he's just big boned," like literally using those words.
Yeah, sure,
And
sure.
it's that kind of maternal blindness that doesn't do the child any
Oh, yeah.
favors.
I mean, I have to say, it's like having two boys that are quite fussy with their food. I think if you had a child that just ate,
Mm.
voraciously, had a huge appetite and just ate all the time, there's a certain joy you get as a parent from
Yeah,
knowing
I,
that
I am nourishing
they're
this
fed.
child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the bigger they get, the more kind of the more you've achieved, the better a parent you are. I could see quite easily how people get in that groove.
Mm. This kind of the sequence of events goes from the kind of confrontation, the I'm fat thing, to Vic going to the store to get some of the diet mixture that he's
Well, he
he's
walks
seen.
as well, doesn't he? He doesn't take the
Yeah.
car; he walks. So this is him starting his kind of new routine.
Mm.
What I loved about that was the clothes that he was wearing. It's so 90s, and it's the clothes that I'm still wearing now. He's got tracksuit bottoms, like some trainers. They're like ankle boot trainers, and then he's got his grey tracksuit bottoms, and then a t-shirt, a shirt, and then he's got his sort of plaid shirt jacket thing over the top of his sweatshirt. It's just like, oh my god, am I still dressing like I'm in the 90s?
Yeah, but if you're outside of fashion like Vic, then those are just classics. Like Leo's
Yeah.
also wearing like a plaid overshirt and stuff. It's just
Mm.
it's just what you wear, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. Outside of fashion.
Mm.
That's how I'll describe myself in future.
There's a really nice sequence of events. He goes to the store. The dog goes missing, I should say, and then he's making his way home. And you get there's only one thing in this movie that makes me uncomfortable now, and I wonder if we need it, which is the Vic's kind of fantasy interludes about Kelly.
Yeah, it's kind of the like hero fantasy, isn't it?
Mm.
The rescuer fantasy, which is, it's a very male wish fulfillment type thing, isn't it? To be needed to be the rescuer to save somebody's life.
Yeah, but they continue throughout the film. She just kind of wanders in because the images that she's possibly drowned, and he runs down and rescues her and gives her the kiss of life. But then in the same kind of costume, she wanders in and out of scenes at moments throughout the film, and I think the film wouldn't be any the worse off without them.
Yeah, I liked the first one. I thought the others were kind of unnecessary, but also I think maybe it's something about him slightly misjudging the fact that she doesn't need saving. She needs direction, but she's not in peril. She doesn't need anybody else to guide her life. She just needs to find it on her own, and maybe that's why, ultimately they can't get any further than they do in their relationship.
Mm. I like the way that the first one from the bridge kind of leans into the sort of furtive sexuality of it. It's kind of shot looking up her skirt a bit, and there is because within each of these male fantasies there is like a sexual undercurrent. You want to
Mm.
rescue this girl because you want her to want to have sex with you.
Yeah,
I
that's
like I
it. To
like
be
the way it
to
kind
be
of
grateful.
yeah, I like the way it kind of leans into that. And it uses the plane overhead to drift in and out of this fantasy as well, which I thought was a
Yeah,
really
it's really
nice
good.
touch.
And, it's the same bridge where he sees them kissing on his way to the store when he's driving, and then he's walking with the dog, and he's on. It's the same point where he sees her in the water. I just think I love all of the kind of the echoes. The girl that's working in the store is drinking the kind of light and healthy milkshake or whatever it is that is the diet drink that he then starts drinking, that you see also advertised on the TV and at the hospital. And that brings us all the way back to the end of the film when he kind of has enough confidence to engage in another conversation with her. All of these little incidental details all kind of pay off later on. Is Yeah, it's really, I'm just saying the same thing I keep saying, but it's like it's really detailed and really clever and really well made and really good kind of storytelling. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Dolly falls ill, and Vic, and this is all very kind of elliptical. Vic comes home and finds her, and then we cut to him in hospital, and starts to withdraw into himself when he's faced with having to make decisions for himself. There's that scene with the nurse asking him, basic questions, and
Hmm.
he can't really bring himself
Yeah,
to
she's
answer.
saying you can stay or you can go, and he sort of half stands up and half sits down and
Mm.
doesn't know what to do, does he? It's yeah, he's really, yeah, not in control of his own decisions.
Obviously, it's something that's fed into him. No pun intended. That's fed into his life throughout, for years and years. But he's a comfort eater, and you can see him, eating candy bars at this stage.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I really like the fact that the film portrays comfort eating, not in a kind of exploitative,
No, it's not grotesque, is
bulimic,
it?
grotesque way. It's not something he's not
Exactly.
gorging himself and vomiting or anything. It's
No,
just
you're really,
it's just something you do
yes,
in the background. And as
yeah, it's really
somebody,
compassionate.
we've just come. We're recording this at the point where I think everyone's had a very, very difficult year, and I've come to understand comfort eating as something that's not to be sneered at or dismissed or thought of
Oh
as
no, totally.
grotesque, as you say.
Yeah, and the fact that he hides donuts behind the cleaning products, like I can relate to
Yeah,
that.
I went for a long walk the other day on a day that was supposed to be a diet day, um, having had a frugal breakfast, and I was having a tough morning, so I had a Greg's sausage roll and a donut whilst I was walking,
Yeah,
and I
good.
thought, comfort eating is it's not to be sneered at. The scenes in the hospital are just stunningly well. I mean, it must have been scripted this way, but it feels like it's just cut together beautifully. Sort of short little elliptical moments that all pack a punch.
But it does have that sort of surreal tone that being in a hospital after hours,
Yeah, that
when
kind of heightened awareness through anxiety, but in such a quiet, dead, antiseptic
yeah,
space.
exactly. When my mom was in hospital for a few weeks before she passed away, and I went to visit, every other day, and it, you're there at like strange hours and these empty, echoing corridors, and
Mm.
yeah, it's really, really bizarre space to be in. I think they really captured that. I loved the Grey Man. He's written as in the script,
Mm.
but David Patrick Kelly, who you might recognize from films such as The Warriors and Commando. You forget he's actually like a really kind of decent actor as well, and he
Mm.
just in that tiny cameo where he's saying about the woman that's supposed to be serving food in the canteen. He's like, you're just like me. You're big and nobody sees you.
Mm.
I'm loud and nobody hears me. Just that sort of. And then we see him later on, don't we, where he's kind of seems to be convulsing on a gurney or something.
Yeah,
Just
he's in his last
those,
days, isn't he?
yeah, really great kind of earthy cameo of somebody that you just meet briefly in life.
Big as an ox, but nobody sees you. I got the same thing. Only I ain't big. I just talk a lot and no one hears me. Then something funny happens. I start whispering. Suddenly everyone hears me. You're not sick, are you? Your mother? It's tough. It's the toughest one. Except for losing a kid. Watching a kid die. That is it. That's the toughest one.
Are you sick?
Oh, they say I'm getting better, but I don't buy the green bananas anymore. They just want me out of here.
I was worried because David Patrick Kelly, like other things I've seen him in, he's quite big performances.
He can turn it up,
Quite
can't he,
yeah,
if he needs to?
he can be gratingly eccentric at times,
Mm.
but he's really, really nicely balanced in this. It's kind of this balance of brashness and introspection is the notes I've written here.
Yeah, but he seems scared, I think, which I really like. He seems really nervous and scared about being in hospital. They keep telling him that he's going to get better and he's going to leave. And then the next thing is we see him,
Yeah.
like I say, convulsing. It's like, wow.
That line that you flagged up before, you're as big as an ox and no one sees you. I mean, you could put that as a tagline for the movie. It's a brilliant
Yeah,
line.
yeah.
Stepping back slightly, the last scene with Dolly gives you some really interesting information. She's saying that she's quite tearful. She's saying that after Pete died and Vic started to grow up, she it felt like like Pete was still around again, and you sort of get a bit of a sense of the fact that she's never allowed him to be his own person. He's always been a replacement for her dead husband.
Yeah, but she's also terrified that he's going to leave too, and then she'll be completely on her own.
Mm. And there was some of the best use of music I've ever seen in this. I only noticed it this time round. you got like a kind of drone builds up, and it comes in from the very end of the Grey Man's scene,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
it builds and builds all the way through from Vic, finding that his mother's died without being told, and then going back to Pete and Dolly's, and
Yeah, going back to the bar,
yeah,
I
this
noticed
kind
that
of in
too.
this kind of
The way it's
tunnel vision.
fluctuating in and out, whoa, whoa, it's
Yeah,
really good. Yeah,
and just the terror building up as he realizes he hasn't got it in him to tell people what's happened, and then going and eating in the back room. It's
yep, yep.
just, and there's a nice little detail within that sequence, really nice little bit of use of shots and cutting.
It goes to almost like a point of view shot, doesn't it?
Yeah, you've got a nice kind of tracking shot kind of coming into the bar, and then a reverse point of view, and then you get like these three cutaways of empty spaces and doorways before you get to Vic eating alone in the back room. It's just
Hmm.
just those three little shots emphasize kind of how alone he is,
Yeah, yeah.
just subliminally. I said subliminally.
You said it.
Was it just me, or did the scene where Dolores takes Victor to watch the planes taking off, did that remind you of Wayne's World?
Yeah, yeah, maybe subconsciously, but yeah, I know what you're saying. I just found it. I know it's not fair, but I found it a little bit kind of. I found her a bit creepy in in the scene. I know she's trying to be compassionate, but yeah,
Well, no,
I just.
it's a creepy moment because she's trying to reassert some sort of control over Vic.
Mm,
She wants to be the center of attention, and she wants, she realizes that he has a crush on Callie, and she wants to kind of realign things, and she's willing to do that in order
mm.
to realign things. It's slightly odd, and even if it is compassionate, which I don't think it is, she still can't help herself at the end with that nasty line, "Are you saving yourself for someone special?" And I'm wondering also, because it's strongly inferred that Dolores had slept with Pete some 15 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I'm wondering if, because Dolly had said earlier that she thought of Vic as like kind of partly as kind of like a replacement for Pete as he was growing up. I wonder if there's something about Victor that reminds Dolores of Pete also.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Mm. She's attracted to him, like possibly genuinely attracted to him in that way, but it's quite subtle and quite ambiguous.
We get a little section where Victor has picked up his mother's possessions from the hospital, and on the way home, he takes a tour of the chef's school that his mum had previously said he doesn't need to go to. So maybe, I don't know if he ever ends up at chef's school, but I think at this point, he feels
Yeah, he
confident enough to just go for a tour and to kind of open his mind to other opportunities, or just a little bit more ambition. So even if he doesn't go to chef school, maybe he'll upgrade the menu sometime at the diner. Who
Yeah,
knows? But
it's just acknowledging there are other horizons.
yeah, and that he's lifting his eyes up from wherever he is to maybe explore his options.
Callie and Dolores finally almost come to blows at the bar. Callie, we're not really kind of giving her much coverage here. She has things going on in her life. She's unhappy with her life generally. She's has a fractious relationship with her boyfriend, and she may well be pregnant by him. So she has a lot on her plate. And Dolores can't help the odd cutting remark here or there. Callie finally reacts, and it all gets a bit heated. But this leads into very strange, kind of interesting moment with Vic trying to. It's kind of a grey area between comforting her and kind of indulging his attraction to her, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because he is kind of childlike. I think it's a genuine attempt at soothing and comforting someone, but also, he's let's say he's pushing a little part of himself, his hands into her private space,
Yeah, I'd
which
say.
actually sounds like a terrible metaphor, doesn't it? He's pushing a part of himself into her private space, but he basically
He's,
he just
he's
he
stroking her hair,
strokes her
but
hair.
it's well
Yeah.
meant and affectionate. But watching it today, it doesn't play out all that comfortably, does it?
Well, it doesn't until she takes his hand and like lays her head into it a little bit, like she appreciates the gesture and knows and understands that it's a kindness, it's compassionate, and yes, he's attracted to her, but it's not like a pervy gesture. So I think her reaction justifies it.
Yeah, And there's, as this is something we mentioned earlier, there's moments of empowerment for Victor here where he's intermittently kind of finding his own voice. There's a bit where he confronts Dolores and
Yeah.
Can't you be nicer to her?
Nice. Did you hear what she said to me?
You don't have to be nice. Just be nicer.
Or what?
What?
Or what, Victor?
Or I'll fire you.
Last I heard, your mother still ran this place.
After Victor has confronted Dolores, Callie's on the phone outside trying to get Jeff to pick her up.
yeah, Victor's shutting up for the night, isn't he?
Yeah, and Leo and his drunk mate confront him, and they sort of push him around and slap him around a bit. And then Victor just leaves. They leave, and then Callie gets in the car with Victor.
And again, it's very uncomfortable watching, because Victor takes her to watch the planes take off, and I think he's sort of trying to recreate the situation with Dolores, but with somebody that he's actually in love with. And it's difficult to watch, and it's even more difficult to put all the grey areas into words here.
Yeah,
because there's so many troubling motivations on both sides here. She's obviously has a lot on her plate and is kind and nice to Victor, but she's still, within her own world. So I wonder if the way that she indulges him is necessarily the right thing to do.
But haven't we, at this point, we've had the scene where she's looking through her photos and she has a picture of herself and a picture of him that she puts side by side to kind of see how they look as a couple. I think she is kind of open-minded to Victor, and she does say to him, you're a big guy and there's more of you to love. I think they're as open-minded about maybe having a relationship as each other. It's not, yes, she is on paper better looking than him, but I think one of the subtexts of this relationship is that she knows that Victor's decent and she could have a decent life with him, but that would be it. She would be trapped here forever now, and that's what he kind of represents. And I think that's why I think she's open-minded to it. But when he's lied to her, she finds out when Dolly's dead, and I think that sort of kind of childish response is one of the things that helps her make a decision to keep moving with her life and not stay still. So when they do say their goodbyes, she's reluctant and has a connection to Victor, but she knows that to get stuck here is the end. Basically, she would become Dolly or Dolores, and I think she wants more than that.
It's quite interesting. The next scenes are where Vic takes her to, well, she thinks she's going to visit Dolly in hospital, but in fact he's taking her to the graveyard.
Yeah.
Even for somebody who's not good at expressing himself, it's a very clumsy way of doing things.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that when they're in the car together, you get one of those scenes where, she is clearly much, much younger than him and much more part of the outside world. She puts a shit song on the radio and starts singing along to it, and
I love these guys.
Yeah,
Sort of
and he has no comprehension of it at all. The whole of pop culture is something that is just outside his experience.
Yeah,
and it plays up the differences between them there even more. And I guess that kind of brings their whole relationship thing to a head within those two scenes, doesn't it? That's the end of it.
It's really nice because you see that she is clearly upset that Dolly has died, but also that Victor has hid it for so long without telling anyone. And she's I want to say strops off, but she walks away from the graveside, clearly upset by the realization that Dolly's dead and that Victor's lied, and doesn't hear him say, "Oh, I didn't want anything to change," which was his reason for keeping it secret.
And it's great that the movie, ties up their relationship, but their relationship, it's central to the film, but it's not all that the film is. You still have to resolve Victor's self-confidence issues. It turns out that the next scenes are where Leo and then Dolores find out that Dolly's dead. I thought it was really great the way that this kind of happened after hours, so it gave you an excuse to light the scene in this kind of hellish neon red
Yeah, yeah,
as
lingering,
Vic
isn't it?
finally descends into the hell that he's been dreading for weeks.
I love it that he's made a pizza for himself, but cut it into like really tiny, tiny pieces, like you would for a child.
Yeah.
It's great as well that from that graveside scene, the entire film pretty much wraps up that evening. None of these lives are over. This is the point where we see them to a certain point, and then we step out and let them continue. God knows what they're up to now. That's how you feel about those characters.
It's really nice that you get a sense of relief when you finally cut out of Victor's final scene in the bar. When you cut to the mailbox in the sort of natural morning light, it's a genuine kind of visual relief as well as an emotional relief to get back to
well, that's
out
it.
of that red light.
The world keeps going, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The world keeps turning. Victor, he's got his grief and his lost love and all of these experiences that he's had. But yeah, the world keeps turning, so he has to kind of just get up and get on with it. And you see almost straight away there's an opportunity maybe to meet somebody else, and now that he has the confidence to talk to someone, maybe that's all the difference. That's all he needed, that little confidence boost to join the world, to step out from his mother's smothering shadow.
In the final scene in the grocery store, I mean, there's moments in this which, like the scene where he discovers that his mother has died. This as well is something that could be written and performed and put together in a straightforward expository way, but it's just really nice little moments cut together, isn't it? The bottles overflowing from the fridge
There's
being refilled.
He catches one bottle, and the way it sort of spins through the air, and his hand whips around under it and catches it. It was just like, wow, amazing catch, dude. That was really cool.
But you get, this is effectively at the end, it's a meet cute, isn't it, between him and the woman who's working the counter. But because it's filmed at a distance, it feels really natural, and it's actually, it's got this magical point of view from a dog.
Yeah.
And then you kind of end. It really made me laugh out loud this time around. Just the ingenuity of ending on a dog's point of view, and then it looking up to see the plane passing over.
See the plane, yeah.
Perfect
really
symmetry with the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
It's magic. This film.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a masterclass in kind of craftsmanship and subtlety, and just having half a dozen people in one or two spaces living their lives for a brief moment, and we kind of just dip in and out of that, and somehow it makes us consider our own place in the world and our friendships, and all of that stuff is it's fabulous.
Having covered both this and Nobody's Fool in more depth than you would with a casual viewing, I know it's going to be at least 10 years away, but I'm looking forward to a double bill of the two films one afternoon. It'd be really nice.
Yeah, that's it.
And I guess that kind of covers it. I mean, it's not a movie that requires 2.5 hours of discussion and exploration. It's just a perfect little jewel, isn't it? I mean, this is the sort of thing that I think that if the dozen or so people who enjoy our podcasts get anything out of the movie itself, that's I feel we've kind of job done here.